Usually when you think about a siege, you picture massive, impenetrable stone walls, right?
Absolutely.
You picture an army safely locked inside a fortress, looking down at the encroaching enemy with boiling oil, heavy artillery, and just a smug sense of security.
Right, the walls are the solution.
Exactly. But then you step into the world of our source material today, and suddenly those walls aren't a sanctuary at all. I mean, they are a trap. We are looking at a diagnostic landscape of a battlefield that is just absolute chaos.
Pure panic.
Oh, 100%.
Oh.
You have an army of orcs hunting you from the outside, a horde of flesh-eating undead waiting for you on the inside, and a literal, physical hourglass sitting on the table draining away your survival time.
It's intense.
It really is. You are listening to The Deep Dive, and today we are extracting the tactics of survival from a very specific block of campaign notes, which is Session 17. We are analyzing how narrative urgency, character mechanics, and sheer panic collide when a party is backed into a corner.
Well, the overarching theme here is the psychology of panic versus preparation. And the stakes heading into this specific session dictate every single irrational and brilliant decision these players make.
So let me paint the picture for you. The party is desperately fleeing a massive orc army marching from Phandalin. And trailing right behind our heroes is a highly vulnerable horde of civilian refugees.
Right, they're completely exposed out in the open.
Completely exposed. Their only hope for shelter is this location called Axelholm, or in Elvish, Minas Gondoithil. It's a cursed, hidden elven citadel that just happens to be infested with ghouls.
Naturally.
So let's unpack this. Because what happens at the threshold of this citadel is a brilliant study in how the physical toll of magic completely alters the battlefield before a single sword is even drawn.
Yeah, we see that toll immediately in the tactical preparations outside the gate. Vildara, the ancient elven moon druid guiding them, sets up a constant comms link for the party using a set of sending stones.
Which is smart.
Very smart. Then there's this crucial exchange of magical artifacts. Vitrovia, the tiefling druid of the party, acquires the Staff of the Woodlands, which is referred to in these notes as the Staff of the Moonlands, from Vildara.
Okay, got it.
But Vitrovia trades her own Staff of Defense back to Vildara, simply so the ancient elf has a walking stick.
Wait, I need to stop you there and challenge that sequence of events. Vildara is an ancient, incredibly powerful archdruid, right?
She is.
So why does simply handing off a magical staff require her to suddenly need a walking stick? I mean, is the staff itself physically heavy, or is there something else happening mechanically?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the walking stick isn't about the weight of the new staff. It's actually about the biological crash following immense arcane exertion.
Oh, like a magical hangover.
Sort of, yeah. Earlier in the narrative, Vildara was maintaining the arcane stability of Vitrovia's pocket dimension while it held 4 people inside. The moment the adrenaline of this handoff at the gate fades, Vildara collapses.
Yeah, just drops.
Yeah, she completely passes out from sheer exhaustion. We are so conditioned by video games to view magic as just, well, a blue mana bar that slowly depletes.
Right, you just chug a potion and you're fine.
Exactly. But this narrative forces us to view magic as a physiological burden. Holding reality apart to sustain a pocket dimension requires a massive exertion of biological energy.
That makes perfect sense. The adrenaline drops and her body just shuts down.
Yeah.
But now the party has a massive problem. They have an unconscious ancient elf, a horde of panicked refugees, and the first major physical obstacle, which is the heavy front gate of Axelholm.
It is locked tight.
Locked tight. So Whiffer, the Aasimar fighter, steps up and uses his Echo Knight abilities. We know from the lore his echo is the manifestation of his twin sister's soul.
Right.
So he projects this magical echo through the iron bars of the gate and then magically swaps places with it. He completely bypasses the physical barrier so he can reach the winch on the other side.
It's a brilliant bypass of a physical obstacle using a spatial mechanic. He circumvents the lock entirely. But, getting to the winch and actually operating the winch are 2 entirely different skill checks.
Which leads to my immense confusion reading these notes. I mean, they have a teleporting fighter, a literal diamond-possessed monk, a cleric channeling divine power, and they can't open a rusty iron gate.
Yeah, it's wild. Whiffer gets inside, but lifting this massive siege gate requires incredible raw strength.
because Boris, the cleric, actually takes physical damage trying to heave this thing open. Eventually, Tsoth, the demon monk personality sharing a body with Radier, steps up with his high-strength stat.
And they get it cranking. They're actually making progress.
They are, and then the mechanism slips. The gate slams shut again.
Because brute physics doesn't care about your character level or your magical lineage. A rusted siege gate counterweight requires sustained monumental force.
Right, it's just pure gravity.
And because they fail that strength check, the dungeon master makes a brilliant pacing move. The environment suddenly dictates the tension.
Oh yeah, this is where it gets incredibly stressful.
The DM places a literal 2-hour hourglass tammer on the physical table.
A physical prop at the table changes everything. I mean, it's no longer abstract game time, it's real-world pressure.
The Orca army is coming.
Yeah, they have exactly 2 hours of in-game time to breach the fortress, clear out the undead, and secure the perimeter so the refugees can get inside.
And they even notice 7 unmanned ballistas at the gate. If they can get the refugees inside, they have heavy artillery ready to go.
But before they can formulate a coherent plan to clear the interior, the game's emergent storytelling throws a massive curveball. Enter ZurkZurk.
Oh man, ZurkZurk.
A 3-foot-tall rock gnome who casually mentions he is a scion of Mirkal, the god of death, just out wandering on a contract.
Just a casual Tuesday for him.
Seriously. You have this apocalyptic siege scenario, the hourglass is draining, and suddenly a tiny, highly lethal agent of death just wanders into the party ranks.
It forces an immediate recalibration of their assets. And, well, looking at the timer, the players make a decision that runs counter to almost every piece of conventional tabletop wisdom.
I know exactly where you were going with this.
Yep.
The number one rule of D&D is never split the party. I mean, you are backed into a corner, you have an unknown number of flesh-eating undead inside, an army outside, and the party decides to divide their forces.
It's crazy.
Why would seasoned players do something so inherently reckless?
Panic. Panic and a false sense of efficiency. You know, when a physical timer is on the table, players stop thinking about survivability and start thinking about spatial coverage.
They think they can just cover more ground.
Exactly. They believe splitting up doubles their clearing speed.
And the names they choose for their strike teams reveal so much about the psychological state of the table. They split into Team Beta Femboy, which consists of Whiffer, Petrovia, and ZurkZurk heading upstairs.
And Team Cuck, which is Boris and Sauce staying on the first floor.
It is pure gallows humor. They are deflecting the intense stress of the timer with sheer absurdity.
Well, if we look at the contrast in execution between these two teams, it perfectly illustrates the concept of over-optimization blindness.
Okay, break that down.
Let's look at the upstairs team first. Mechanically, they stack their abilities flawlessly. Vitrovia casts Pass Without Trace, which we know grants a massive +10 bonus to stealth checks.
She pairs that massive magical buff with ZurkZurk, who already possesses naturally high roguelike stealth modifiers. The math there means they basically become ghosts.
Exactly. They systematically and silently clear the entire second floor without triggering a single enemy.
But here is where the over-optimization catches up to them, right?
Yes. They find these massive strategic fireplaces and realize enemies could drop down the chimneys during the siege, so they decide to barricade them.
And they suddenly realize their brilliant stealth composition has a glaring mechanical flaw, which is 0 raw upper body strength.
Vitrovia and ZurkZurk are practically invisible, but they are struggling to push a basic wooden table across the room while the clock is relentlessly ticking down.
They optimized so heavily for infiltration that they sacrificed the fundamental physics required to actually secure the environment. It is hilarious to picture.
Meanwhile, downstairs, the approach is, well, somewhat less nuanced.
Yeah, Team Upstairs is playing a tactical espionage game, and Sock, the literal demon monk, decides the best way to clear a cursed, highly dangerous fortress is to just violently kick a heavy door off its hinges.
It's definitely a choice.
If the clock is ticking, why is the monk kicking doors instead of checking them for traps or listening for movement?
That is the adrenaline talking. The upstairs team is meticulously managing spell slots and stealth rolls. Sog's player is likely looking at the draining hourglass and calculating that subtlety takes too much real-world time.
So he defaults to kinetic momentum.
Exactly. He defaults to kinetic momentum, but kinetic momentum in a confined space is incredibly dangerous.
Especially because kicking in that door instantly triggers an ambush by 5 ghouls, which leads to one of the most terrifying communications breakdowns I've ever seen in a session recap.
Oh, the Sending Stones.
Yes. Vildara set up those sending stones earlier. The upstairs team radios down to check on progress. And Sog, who is currently surrounded by flesh-eating monsters and screaming horrific battle cries, calmly claims over the radio that they are good.
This raises an important question about the danger of compartmentalized information during a crisis. The upstairs team assumes they are safe because their immediate environment is clear.
And the radio check came back positive.
Right. They are operating under a devastatingly false sense of security. They are completely unaware that their downstairs counterparts are fighting a desperate battle for survival in a literal meat grinder.
So what does this all mean for the combat itself? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of that downstairs fight, because things go sideways immediately.
They really do.
Boris, the cleric, steps up and uses Turn Undead. He channels divine energy and successfully repels 3 of the ghouls, forcing them to run away.
It's a vital piece of crowd control. Turn Undead dictates the enemy's movement, which, in a tight dungeon corridor, completely reshapes the battlefield topography.
It buys them vital space to breathe.
But the breathing room evaporates in seconds because of the ghoul's signature mechanic.
Right, a ghoul strikes Boris. He rolls a constitution saving throw, and he fails. Instantly, Boris is inflicted with the paralyzed condition.
He is frozen stiff while these undead monsters are tearing into him.
Now, I have to ask, it's just one failed constitution save. Does it really swing the battle that much?
Mechanically and psychologically, paralysis is one of those devastating conditions in the game. I mean, in many encounters, taking damage just lowers a numerical health pool. Your character is still fully functional.
You can still swing a sword.
Right. But paralysis completely strips the character of their agency. The player can no longer move or take actions. More importantly, the game's mathematical mechanics state that any attack against a paralyzed target from within 5 feet is an automatic critical hit.
Wow, so it's not just a loss of a turn, it's a cascading failure of the party's survivability.
Precisely. The action economy completely collapses. In a small skirmish, losing one player isn't just a 50% drop in offensive capability for that 2-man team.
It exponentially increases the threat level.
Yeah, because the enemies can now focus all their attacks on a defenseless target for massive damage. It shifts the player's psychological state from strategic combatant to helpless victim.
It artificially induces real, palpable panic at the table.
It really does.
It's the tabletop equivalent of sleep paralysis, but the monsters are actually eating you. Boris is frozen, taking brutal hits, completely vulnerable. Finally, the paralysis breaks.
And in sheer panic, he manages to attack, absorbs another blow, and physically slams a heavy door shut just to trap the ghouls on the other side.
And while Boris is desperately trying to recover his hit points, Saw attempts to pivot tactically. He tries to use stealth to maneuver around the remaining ghouls.
Which is deeply ironic considering Saw just kicked a door off its hinges moments ago.
So ironic. He rolls for stealth, and the dice just absolutely betray him. He completely fumbles the roll, and the resulting clatter alerts the entire wing of the fortress to their location.
It is a comedy of tactical errors. The kinetic momentum approach failed, the stealth approach failed, and they are hemorrhaging resources.
At this exact moment, tiny ZurkZurk, the gnome of death, sneaks down the stairs from the quiet, over-optimized second floor to see what all the noise is.
This part is so good.
He peeks around the corner, takes one look into the main ghoul den, which is just crawling with horrors, looks back at the battered downstairs team, and the entire party just collectively nopes right out of that hallway.
Breaking contact in that scenario is the only mathematically sound decision. Recognizing a bad engagement and preserving what little hit points you have left prevents a total party wipe.
But the momentum of D&D combat can flip on a single decision, right? Boris recovers his wits. Sock, furious at his botched stealth attempt and the ensuing retreat, decides to abandon subtlety entirely.
He goes full demon monk.
He storms into the West Room and unleashes his martial arts. He slaughters 3 ghouls completely solo in a single sequence. It really proves the Demon Monk title isn't just flavor text.
Well, if we connect this to the underlying mechanics, it's a perfect showcase of the monk's action economy. By spending Kai points to activate Flurry of Blows, a monk bypasses the normal flow of turn-based combat.
So they just attack way more often.
Right, they output an overwhelming volume of attacks in a single 6-second window. When the dice finally align, that volume of kinetic offense can clear a room of low-level minions with terrifying efficiency.
Sock neutralizes the immediate downstairs threat purely through mathematical attack volume.
Which sets the stage for the climax of the session. Because while Saw is acting as a one-man wrecking crew downstairs, Team Upstairs pushes into the first-floor throne room.
and they find the boss of this infestation, the largest undead entity in the Citadel.
Because the upstairs team operated under that pass-without-trace bubble, they arrive at the boss encounter with their spell slots and hit points completely intact.
So they crush this boss entity with absolute ease.
They barely break a sweat. It really highlights how extreme resource conservation early in a mission trivializes what should be a deadly encounter later on.
And while searching the remains of the boss ghoul, Vitrovia finds a mysterious signet ring. Now, we don't know what it does yet, but it's a classic Dungeon Master breadcrumb. That ring is definitely anchoring some deep lore for a future session.
It is a narrative seed, certainly. But the immediate narrative is entirely focused on the physical hourglass on the table.
Which is almost completely empty at this point.
Yep, the two teams finally reunite on the first floor. They know the main ghoul den is still infested, and they know the orcs are practically at the front door.
With the timer literally running out, strategy goes out the window. The entire squad hits the ghoul den together, and they turn into an absolute blender.
The synergy that was completely absent when they split the party suddenly manifests. You combine the divine crowd control of the cleric, the precise strikes of the fighter and the rogue, and that overwhelming blunt force volume of the monk.
It's devastating.
By focusing their fire in a confined space, they wipe out the remaining infestation in seconds.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The ghouls are dead, but the DM announces the hourglass has exactly 1 minute left. 1 minute of game time.
The tension is incredible.
The orcs are marching. The refugees are huddled outside that heavy iron gate that Sog and Boris couldn't keep open earlier. The siege is imminent.
So what do?
Vitrovia breaks off from the combat in the den and sprints to the front gate. She uses her druid ability, Wild Shape. Now, we usually see moon druids pop Wild Shape just to get a massive pool of temporary hit points to tank a boss, or maybe turn into an owl to scout ahead.
Right. It is almost exclusively used as a combat buffer or an infiltration tool.
But Vitrovia doesn't do that. She calculates the large size category and the raw strength stat of a brown bear, and she uses it as a literal forklift.
That is so smart.
She doesn't attack anything. She grabs the heavy winch of the gate, uses the sheer animal strength of the bear form to heave it up, and holds the iron gate open so the innocents from Phandalin and Nomengard can rush inside.
This raises an incredibly important point about top-tier resource management under pressure. Vitrovia burned one of her most potent combat resources to solve an environmental puzzle.
Yeah, she didn't save it for a monster.
Exactly. She recognized that the true victory condition of this session wasn't just killing the undead, it was securing the perimeter for the refugees before the timer ran out.
Which is huge.
Using a high-value combat transformation purely for its structural listing capacity is just brilliant lateral thinking from the player.
It is wildly cinematic. You can picture this giant brown bear straining at the gears of this rusted elven gate. The refugees are pouring in, terrified, dust kicking up everywhere.
And the clock is still ticking.
Right. And the moment the last person is through the threshold, the bear lets go. The heavy gate slams shut with a massive echoing boom. The timer runs out. They did it. The fortress is secure.
The psychological relief at the table in that moment must have been palpable. I mean, they survived the timer.
But it wouldn't be this campaign if the universe didn't immediately punish them for catching their breath.
Of course not.
The dust settles in the courtyard. The party is battered and exhausted. And then, echoing off the ancient stone walls, a voice calls out. A familiar Irish-accented voice casually singing, "Yo-ho, yo-ho, I'm back, fucker."
Arca O'Shea.
The pirate captain, Teach's father, a man who is supposed to be very, very dead, casually announcing his return from the grave from inside their locked, allegedly secure fortress.
Think about the psychological impact of that reveal. The players just spent 2 hours of intense real-world stress bleeding their characters dry to secure a physical perimeter against an external threat.
And they thought they were safe.
Exactly. And in the very moment of their victory, they realize the inside of their sanctuary is already compromised by a ghost from their past. The walls didn't keep the danger out. They just locked the party in with it.
And if a resurrected pirate captain wasn't enough to shatter their nerves, the party runs up to the battlements to look out over the valley.
It gets worse.
It does. The orc army isn't just marching anymore. They have stopped exactly 1 mile away from Axelholm, and they are methodically setting up a massive encampment. The frantic chase is over. The grueling psychological grind of the siege has officially begun.
They traded a 2-hour sprint for an indefinite marathon. And they are starting that marathon with completely depleted spell slots, drained hit points, and broken communications.
Exactly. For those of you listening, think about a time you were managing a massive crisis. You have different teams taking wildly different approaches, communicating poorly, and making decisions based on blind panic.
We've all been there.
You pull off an incredible, stressful, last-second victory. You finally lock the door, you sit down, you take a breath, and then you look out the window and realize the real crisis is just calmly setting up camp on your front lawn.
Well, if we look at the historical behavior of this specific party, they had a deeply ingrained track record of making extreme compromises when their backs were against the wall. I mean, we know Redir constantly wrestles with his internal demons and infernal contracts to gain power. We know Boris has shifted his devotion between unpredictable gods when it suited his survival.
They are pragmatic to a fault. They do what they have to do.
Which leaves us with a terrifying reality to consider as we close the book on Session 17, with a massive, highly organized orc army cutting off all physical escape outside, and the unpredictable, resurrected ghosts of Axelholm's past manifesting inside. How long will it be before this depleted, desperate party realizes that the only mathematical way to survive a siege of this magnitude is to strike a bargain with the very evils they've been running from?
When the storm outside is deadly enough, you'll invite absolutely anything into your shelter just to survive the night. We'll leave you to chew on that one. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.